part of the last century, desperate times had settled upon that mysterious island of ice and fire in the North Atlantic, Iceland. During that era, as much as a third of the entire population of Iceland emigrated to North America. Our Amma, or grandmother, named Örk Gudmundsdóttir, and Avi, or grandfather, named Magnus Magnusson, were one couple who joined the exodus with their infant son, Sigurður Tryggvi. This is a close-up photo of our beautiful Amma, or grandmother. Our grandparents landed in North Dakota, where they resided for a year or two, during which time Amma gave birth to a premature baby boy named Gudmundur Freeman, or Mundi, who weighed in at just over 2 pounds. She kept him alive in a shoebox in their cook stove. It was in North Dakota that they heard about Point Roberts and decided to try a new life there. When they arrived in Point Roberts, they picked the spot near where the Elskan house stands today and built a log cabin. All the settlers at that time were squatters, as Point Roberts had been set aside for a naval base, not residence. Even though they did not own the land, they began clearing, fencing, and building outbuildings in the hope that Point Roberts would be open for homesteading. Eventually, President Roosevelt did just that, and they became the happy owners of 80 acres of homestead land. When parts of fish traps washed up on the beach in a storm, our grandfather salvaged them, and they became the bones of the Elskan house. Our father, Agner, was born in the log cabin, and he remembered the burning of it when he was a small boy. Here is a photo of our dad with his cat, Polly. He also had a pet skunk. This is Amma with our dad. In the photo, you can see the fencing and the scant amount of trees in the background. There was a great fire that burned all over Point Roberts before my dad's memory.
There was a mill on Mill Road that was jointly owned by Ron and Brian Calder's great-grandfather and our grandfather. We feel that it is quite possible that the remaining lumber for the house may have come from there. Mill Road is named for that mill. Many outbuildings that still stood in my childhood on our property included a spacious barn, chicken house, 3 connected sheds, a black and grimy tool shed, the usually empty wood shed, and a jar shed, with an attic of glass hurricane lamps. Way out back, beyond these sheds, stood a disused smokehouse and a 2-seater outhouse. This photo of the barn was the only one we have, as you can see, and in its day it was quite large.
Just like in the days of the Vikings, Avi built a boat on the property. Here he is standing in front of it. You can see the smokehouse behind it. Here's his boat with the other men and a team of horses getting ready to bring the boat down to the water. Standing on one of the fence posts is Ellis Johnson, whom we called Uncle. Johnson Road is named for the Johnson family. This is our Amma with her prize-winning sheep. She always fed the black sheep with a baby bottle. Her hand sewing and embroidery also won awards at the county fair. Avi was the head pipe fitter at the Alaska Packers cannery at Lily Point. Jonas Thorstensen was his assistant. Avi invited the phone company to install the first telephone in Point Roberts in the Elskan house. Neighbors came often to use the phone.
Clever built-in features within the house included a large glass-doored dish cupboard located next to the kitchen stove, with storage space below, pull-out bins in the pantry, a sidewall cupboard going up the stairs, shown on the left, and a stair landing floor on hinges, which opened to a large storage space below. Years later, our mother would urge us sisters to hide in there if a certain Ron Calder came around. On the right is a built-in cupboard door that we made out of the original wainscot. Upstairs were 2 connected bedrooms with sloping ceilings, and originally a widow's walk. Dad said he could see to South Beach from up there. Years later, he broke it up for kindling and boarded up the door with metal printing press sheets. Many years after that, Dad dismantled the door between the rooms after our little brother locked himself in and couldn't unlock it. Maybe that was what motivated him to always take things apart. This photo shows looking out towards the widow's walk, and you can also see the vent in the upstairs floor that we children would use to open and eavesdrop on what was going on downstairs.
Although our dashing grandfather was a very hard worker, he became one of the several Point Roberts Icelandic settlers who began taking an interest in the occult. This group would gather at their private homes and attempt to call up their long-lost loved ones. According to the legend, it was the long-lost loved ones who instructed at least 2 of the couples to switch out their spouses. Avi was quite a handsome man, and he became convinced that he should be married to Mrs. Vogg, not to our Amma. In one of the more notorious scandals of Point Roberts, he left town with Mrs. Vogg and eventually married her after our grandmother died from a broken heart. This devastating situation changed our family forever. Here's our father on the front porch with Amma after Avi left. Dad would have been around 19. You can see the front of the house behind them. Sigurður Tryggvi, Guðmundur Freeman, Mundi, and our father Agnar Braya all attended university. Sigurður, or Sid, became a dentist. When he first graduated from dental college, he set up shop under a tree, and the Elskan house became home to Point Roberts' first and only dental office. We don't have an actual photo of the dental chair, but this is what we think it would have looked like, and this is the actual tree. Dad left Point Roberts to finish high school in Portland and then attended University of Washington.
The homestead stood empty from the late 20s to the early 30s when Dad moved back to Point Roberts. During the 30s, he invited Agnes and Einar Sand to live there as well, with their children Larry, Dorothy, Beverly, and baby Mary Lou, who was born there. Later, others stayed there as well, including Schoolie Johnson and Bill Teller. One of those days, a worn-out newspaper girl, pushing her flat-tired bike, trudged up the road in front of the house, and Agner called her in to see if he could help. He fixed the tire right there in the living room, and Schoolie offered her her first cup of coffee. That was how our mom, Shirley Dennison from Tawasin, met our dad, Agner. When they married, fishnets hung in the spare bedroom and were consequently moved to the cow stalls in the barn to make room for the new baby, me, Kristen Mary.
Here is Kristen sitting outside in the backyard as a baby and later sitting on the well a few years older. You can see a bit of the back of the 3-sectioned shed that was behind the house, as well as the lean-to addition on the back of the house, and the Leghorn Heights house owned by the Meikle family in the background.
In 1955, Dad built a sawmill, hired his fishing buddies from Blaine, Thane and Carl Older among them, and from the proceeds was able to put a new roof and siding on the house and welcome home the next baby, Hagen. Eventually, the sawmill fell into disuse and the barn fell down, though remnants of its north stone wall remain. Tryggvi Robert was born in 1960. He is pictured here with our dad on Dad's loader. New wallpaper, bookcases, and flooring dressed up the home. An indoor bathroom had been added in 1952 and a refrigerator in 1954. Laundry was done in the old wringer washer off the back porch, which had also housed a cooler cupboard for perishables such as milk and butter before the fridge came. A large amount of freezer was our mother's pride and joy, but part of the pantry wall had to be cut out to accommodate it. Mom painted the back door glossy red with all the family names in gold lettering, including Taffy the dog. Mom and my grandmother, May Zoe Dennison, planted borders and garden beds around the house. The purple irises and spring daffodils still bloom there.
Our parents built their large Spanish-style dream home on the family homestead in 1970. Here is a photo of Sigurður Sid and our dad Agnar celebrating our moving into the new house, where you can see the backside of Elskan and the red door in the background. After we moved, our parents rented the Elskan house out for several years. During this time, a family resided there for quite a long time who claimed that they were having difficulties with the house being haunted. Since we always felt the presence of our Amma when we lived there, we didn't think that much of it. But the way they talked, it did seem like Amma wasn't happy with them being there. After that, our brother Trygve and his wife Marianne moved in. Here is an article showing him and his son Travis, the first baby born in a house in Point Roberts in 50 years. Again, you can see the back of the Elskan behind him, and it is easy to see that Elskan is looking a little forlorn. The big newspapers, such as the New York Times and the LA Times, love to interview our father. Here's an article about him and our family and our times on the property written for the LA Times in 1986. This story and photo are available online today on the LA Times website. The chicken house behind was part of the Leghorns Heights property owned by the Meekles next door. Years passed, and our family faced the very tragic and untimely death of our brother. Renters came and went, and the Elskan house fell into extreme disrepair. Then our father passed away. We said to our mother, "We should fix up the old house," and she replied, "It's a wreck. Everyone is telling me to tear it down." Well, but how would Dad feel about us tearing it down? Never let it be said that our mother did not teach us about the proper way to lay a guilt trip. The first thing to tackle was a real foundation. The house had never had one. It was strictly post and beam construction, and the beams were seriously cattywampus, resulting in a floor that rivaled the fun house at a carnival. So the home was jacked up and a concrete foundation was built. A beam was installed to replace where the big wall had separated the kitchen and living room. The layer of siding installed in the 1950s was removed to reveal the original beveled cedar siding. The lean-to style addition on the back of the home, where we used to keep apples and also had a pantry, was too far gone to keep. Here you can see the original siding that had been hidden for 40 years, up in the corner. Some of this original siding was usable, but most was not, and so we matched the original with new. When the siding came off, the old lumber from the fish traps came to light. Most of it was 2x12 and larger. We decided to rebuild the outside walls in 2x6 lumber and came up with the idea of reusing the fish trap lumber as a design element. Here you can see how we did that. Elskan got new wiring, plumbing, windows, and drywall. We were able to sand down the original floors in the living room and bedrooms. Here are some photos of the Elskan house today.